Hello again. I thought it might be helpful to add a few examples onto my last video. So when we left off, we had this circle here. It has all the points filled out around it, and it also has the radians filled out. I did just two quick examples of finding trigonometric values using the unit circle, but I thought it might be helpful to try a few more. So I'm going to keep coming back to this page that has the unit circle on it to help us. But let's just start with some basic problems. I'm going to write some problems down, and I would actually love for you, if you were at home trying this out, I would love for you to try some of these on your own. So while I'm taking a minute to write them down, I would love for you to just try these. You'll notice that these are all radians going around the circle. And I'm just kind of alternating between some cosine problems and some sine problems, but there's no particular reason for that other than I want you to get practice with both. Whoops. Okay, 7 problems. Seems like a lot, but the beautiful thing about these problems is that if you know the unit circle, then these problems are super easy and super fast. And this is why memorizing the unit circle is really, really helpful, because if you have this memorized, then you would just know the answers to these problems like that. So quick review. Remember last time that we proved that x comma y is the same thing as cosine comma sine. So we're going to use that to help us evaluate all of these problems. The first problem is sine of pi over 2. So if I go back to this page, I'm going to look for pi over 2, and I'm going to use a highlighter here to help us notice where these are. Actually, I might use a pointer, my lightsaber pointer. There it is right there. Pi over 2 is right there in the middle. Now it wanted the sine of pi over 2. Sine is going to be the y value. So you just, there it is. There's the answer. The answer is 1. So the next question was cosine of 3 pi over 4. All right, so the first thing is I noticed it's a cosine, so I'm going to be looking for an x value, and then 3 pi over 4 is the angle. So I'm going to go back over here. And the more and more you get used to the unit circle, personally, I like to memorize the radians around the circle first to make sure I'm really comfortable with that. There's lots of templates out there online of blank radians. There's lots of Quizlets and things like that that you can Google and find practice with that. But if you know exactly where 3 pi over 4 is, which there it is, lightsaber showing us the way, I know 3 pi over 4 is going to be one of the ones that's like on a 45-degree angle. And it's there. And the question was cosine. So cosine is the x value, which is there. So the answer to that question is negative square root of 2 over 2. And I'm just going to keep going. So I have the sine of 5 pi over 3 and the cosine of 11 pi over 6. All right, sine of 5 pi over 3. 5 pi over 3, I had to look for it for a minute. There it is, it's right there. I want the sine, so the answer to that one's going to be negative square root of 3 over 2, so sine is y. The other one was the cosine of 11 pi over 6, and I see that here. And the x value is right there, square root of 3 over 2. So for number 3, I had negative square root of 3 over 2. And for number 4, I had a positive square root of 3 over 2. I know it might seem strange that you have so many repeat answers, but if you look at the unit circle, it has patterns of repeat answers all the way around it. So it makes sense that your questions are going to have the same, like similar answers. All right, real quick, let's look at sine of pi and cosine of 2 pi. So if I look over here, sine of pi, pi is right there. The sine is going to be the y value, so it's 0. The sine of pi is 0. And straight across is 2 pi. This one was a cosine question, so cosine goes with x. So the cosine of 2 pi is 1. So I can answer both of those questions relatively quickly. This one was 0 and this one was 1. And again, those just came from my points, and the points where those points come from was shown in the previous video. Now, last question, not meant to be a trick question, but it is meant to make you think. Notice that the sign is wanting a negative, sorry, the sign of a negative pi over 2. I don't know if you've talked about that before, but I think I briefly mentioned it in the last video. I'll use my lightsaber again. So positive angles go in a counterclockwise way. They start at the x-axis and go counterclockwise. Negative angles start at the x-axis and go clockwise. So if I want positive pi over 2, I start at the x-axis and I move to here. So if I want negative pi over 2, I'm going to start at the x-axis and go right here. So that means that this angle, I'm going to write in a different color, 3 pi over 2 is actually the same thing as pi over 2. Like it lands in the same location. Those are called coterminal angles. Coterminal. So you usually can figure out the answer for a trig question if you can know its coterminal angle. So in this case, it wanted to know the sine of negative pi over 2, and the answer to that would be -1. So now you have a few examples of how to use that, and that is all we have time for today. Hope you guys have a good day.